This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. All right, this guy has cost me tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, every couple of weeks, I'm just paying this guy, and I don't know where the money's going. But I am here with Mike McDerment, CEO of FreshBooks. Mike, welcome to the Speaking Show.
Thank you for having me. Who are you talking about?
What do you do with all the money, man? I got vendors, I got contractors. I'm getting these FreshBooks, $1,500 to this one, $1,200 to this one, $900 to this one. Now, all this money goes to your bank account, and then you decide who to pay, or how does that work?
Not exactly, but now I understand where you're coming from, which is helpful. So,
thousands of dollars every month just flying towards FreshBooks. All right. Well, it's very exciting to talk to you. Give us a little bit of a snapshot of your professional journey and what brought you to the work that you're doing today, and what were some of the cool, interesting stops along the way.
Thank you for having me, David. So my story is, I'm sure, common to many listeners in many ways, in that I went to school, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And in my case, I ended up starting a couple of businesses. And one was an events business. To promote it, I taught myself how to build websites. And then my caterer for that event needed a website. And then I found myself building websites for small business owners. I had been to business school. I was leaning a little more towards design and marketing. And so I built that design firm up. And what we really ended up helping people do is do internet marketing. And this is like, the year 2000, 2001, 2002, 3, 4, that kind of territory. So we sort of emerged. We got this discipline going where we basically just helped people, find targeted customers online and sort of build websites and things like that persuaded people to purchase. This is pretty common stuff now. If you're in the various industries, everyone's doing internet marketing. But it was, I guess it was pretty early days back then. Anyhow, one day, this is where my path maybe gets a little different. One day, I accidentally saved over an invoice, billing my clients for that. I'd been using Word and Excel, and I knew I didn't want to move to the accounting softwares that were out there because they were too complex, and decided to build something for myself. I'd been learning how to, write some basic software. And, long story short, here we are. That was about, on the order of 15 sort of years ago. And, I ended up hunkering down in my parents' basement for 3.5 years, get the business off the ground. We were cloud before there was cloud. And so today, FreshBooks is the #2 small business accounting software in America. Clearly people are sending you invoices with FreshBooks, David, which I'm just delighted to hear. Anyone can get going for free, no problem. It's the big difference with us is we've gone ahead and built it for the owner instead of the accountant. So super easy to use invoicing and, accounting software. And I guess the final thing I'll just say is available on all your devices. And again, I feel like I'm talking a little longer about our stuff, but it's really built for people who get paid for their time and expertise. We don't do retail. We don't do restaurants. So that's part of what helps make it simple. And it sounds like those are the kinds of folks you work with.
Yes, absolutely. Well, man, so many jumping off points to what you just shared. Let's go back to when you were frustrated with the tools that were out there in the marketplace. And there were some big competitors. I mean, there were some 800-pound gorillas. You were starting at zero. They were already at millions and millions of dollars and probably, tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of users. Kind of a David and Goliath story. What was your mindset going in saying, I'm going to revolutionize this industry. I'm going to make the accounting software that's easy to use and that owners will love. And yes, I'm starting at 0 users, but I'm going to take over the world. What was some of that thinking, and what was some of the support and some of the reinforcement that you got early on that kept you going?
I think so much of things sort of starts, with mindset, to your point, and where you begin. And for us, the real beginnings, those early days, were ones more about passion and serving customers than they were about global market domination. And I think that has informed everything, sort of forever and ongoingly. Like, I didn't get into this because I wanted to make money. I got into this because I had a problem to solve for myself. I realized other people would like it. I liked serving other people and helping them succeed. And then you just sort of keep going and turning that crank. And so when you think about, the 800-pound gorilla or maybe 900-pound gorilla, huge, like massive market share, advantages, huge organizational capabilities, billions of dollars of market cap, and we're in my basement. And, we just said, hey, listen, we're going to do this because we like it. Let's try and pull the thread and see how far we can go. And I give some talks about this kind of thing. And I think, we didn't use revenue to govern our success in the early days. It was, are people signing up? We haven't figured out how to make money with that yet, but we've got lots of people signing up. And so maybe we're onto something. And then you talk with a customer and they're using it and they're loving it. And it's like, we love you. This is all I want to use. We're interested. Can you do this next? And we're like, oh, we can do that next. And that is a little window into where we were at and how we thought about things. And so we started out with, not the grandiose ambitions of dominating a market, just really doing a good job, one customer at a time. And then, gradually sort of scaled up. And now, we're a little bigger than we were.
I want to take a detour, and not maybe a small detour, but maybe a little bit of a more detailed detour into your book. And you wrote a book back in 2013 called Breaking the Time Barrier, How to Unlock Your True Earning Potential. And I think when most people think freelancer or web designer, as you mentioned, or any sort of contractor, and then they think, oh, I'm going to use FreshBooks. And I'm going to use FreshBooks for hourly billing. Now, of course, FreshBooks is invoicing software and accounting software. It's not necessarily tied to hourly billing. And you're encouraging people to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing hourly billing. So talk about the book, talk about the ideas that came from, talk about your own experience of kind of where you went wrong with some hourly billing and found yourself undercharging or wrong charging. How did that become a burning issue for you?
This is a topic worthy of, probably several calls. Let me try and just go ahead and condense it. So yes, I wrote a book. It's free. Let's start with that. It's free. It's been downloaded over 250,000 times. You can go and get it online. It's called Breaking the Time Barrier. Search FreshBooks, Breaking the Time Barrier, something like that. It takes about 45 minutes to read. So it's not going to, sort of consume a huge number of your cycles. Just a disclaimer, it's written in a fable format and not everybody loves those. But here's my thing. If you don't get, the return on your 45 minutes from reading that book, I will be stunned. So go ahead and read it. Go ahead and download it. It's free. So yes, and we offer, the ability, we offer time tracking in our offering. And, depending on how many people are doing it, we actually charge money for it. So why would I write a book about not tracking time and at odds with that? And there's a whole bunch of good reasons. But, again, back to the customer centricity that is FreshBooks. Writing this book was inspired by going out to dinners with our customers. So over the years, myself and other team members, if you're in a city or whatever, we set it up so you can invite people out to dinner. It's not a pitch, it's mostly about getting them together. They meet each other, network, start new business. It's very fun. But I would go to these and people would tell me, I'd hear them going through things with regards to how much to charge their clients and how to price that I had been through. The pattern was there. And I was like, geez, I have some things I can help them with. And so wrote the book. And the premise of the book is about shifting you from a mindset of, time and billing or, materials and cost plus to one of value-based billing. And that is not an easy journey to go on for many people. It takes a variety of skills and communication techniques, but most of all, it takes a shift in sort of mindset. And so the book kind of, tries to show you the difference between one model, which is billing for time, and another model, which is billing for value. And, if you want inspiration to go on the journey, I like to point out that, if you're customer or client obsessed, which, our owners are at FreshBooks, if you're client obsessed, billing by the hour actually, pits you against your clients. It is a form of enormous misalignment because you are incented to work more hours because that's how you get paid. And your client is incented to have you work fewer hours. And so just, for that reason alone, it's a good reason to get off billing by the hour. Opinion mine. And we itemize a whole bunch of other reasons. Value-based billing is a different approach. It's where you spend some time up front with a client and you try to, sort of uncover what is the problem they're trying to solve by engaging you, and then hang a price tag on that based on what it is. And you do that up front. So you're aligned. They're like, here's the problem. You're like, okay, I'll solve this for $2,000. And they'll be like, wow, it's worth $100,000 to me. You're going to solve it in $2,000. I'm so pleased. And you might have been like, well, if I charged by the hour, it would have been $500. But, because I know what the problem is and, now I can hang a price on it that works. So that's, in a very small nutshell, what value-based billing is about. It's about, aligning with your client on what the value of the problem is you're trying to solve for them and the results, and then charging accordingly.
Now, I do want to dig into this because I love this topic. And we're going to get to some other things too, because I want to hear about 19 hours, $200,000. I want to get to that story. But this detaching from hourly billing, when we do one project, and this could be graphic design, web design, consulting, coaching, training, CEO, kind of, C-suite board retreat, whatever it is, we're uncovering the scope and depth of the problem. We're trying to put a number on it in dollars, hours, percentages, profit, whatever that is. I think where people get screwed up, Mike, is they say, okay, I'm talking to client A. Client A has, like you said, let's say it's a $100,000 problem. Based on what I feel they can afford and based on how urgently they want to solve the problem, I'm going to solve this $100,000 problem for $2,000. Now I talk to client B. Client B has a $300,000 problem. I'm going to use the same logic. I'm going to do basically the same service. And now I'm going to charge them $6,000 and they will be just as excited because the proportion is the same. So I'm thinking about client A and I'm putting a $2,000 price tag on my own value. I'm going over here to client B, putting a $6,000 price tag on my own value. When I wake up on day 3, I'm like, Mike, I don't know. Am I a $2,000 guy? Am I a $6,000 guy? Am I a $10,000 guy? So our identity is sometimes tied in with the size of projects or the average billing that we typically do for a project. Another mindset challenge, I realize, what's your advice about really disconnecting any measure of time, effort, energy from value?
I think, and you go ahead and ask me another question if this doesn't squarely get at what you're getting at, because I'm not trying to avoid the question, but where my head went to when I heard all that is, I think something people forget is, like, as the service provider, ultimately it doesn't matter how you perceive your value. And by the way, please go ahead and value yourself. I'll go ahead and tell you you're important to me. But at the end of the day, value, it's really in the eyes of the client. They determine what value is. And so the only thing that really matters is not whether you're a $10,000 person or, a $6,000 person. And by the way, what is that? 2% of the project? Like, let's all raise our prices because that's, probably not enough. But having said that, what really matters is whatever you charge. Maybe it's 30% of the project. If the client at the end of the day is like, you are incredibly valuable, that's what matters. To me, and they get to decide what sort of value is. And so sometimes I think, we can get all hung up in how we perceive ourselves and kind of the box that we're trying to bucket ourselves. And it's almost like, how do we move away from that, better understand our clients, focus on solving their problems, and good things will just fall out of it.
Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless. I also want to ask you, because a lot of our audience are consultants, coaches, trainers, thought leaders, speakers, etc. This book, first of all, it's a great book. And I'm not a fable guy, because you mentioned that it's not everyone's cup of tea. I generally don't like these fable books, but because I think it's about value-based pricing, and that's something that I love and is near and dear to my heart, I was like, this is so good. This is so great. I want to ask you about the publishing journey, and you got some pretty great endorsements. So you got, people like Tim Ferriss, you got all kinds of other people, big names, right? Dan Pink, some other folks. How did we get these endorsements? Just being little Mike McDerment back in 2013. Did you meet these people? Are you just a wonderful, fantastic networker? Are you a fearless asker? What's the magic combination?
It's probably, the truth is probably some combination of all of the above. But, what I have found, and this is what I feel like people rarely understand, is that there is, behind every online, relationship, there's usually some offline relationship or connection. And so if I trace these back, I had met Dan Pink, through a random email I sent him once upon a time, which he was kind enough to reply to back when he wrote sort of free agent in 2003 or whatever, which inspired me at FreshBooks. He came to Toronto. I said a very quick, "Hey, very nice to meet you. Just want to connect the dots on what I'm doing," when he spoke. And so I went up after he spoke at a thing and I just introduced myself. And it was a 30-second interaction. I left it at that. Then I made the fearless ask, by email when I was like, "Hey, I've got this book. This is what it is. I think it fits what you're all about for these reasons." And he was like, "Okay." And, I don't know if he actually read it. 45 minutes, maybe he did. And I'll also say this was, he has obviously continued to rise in prominence. And, so lucky in that I got involved with him there. That's kind of the story there. Tim Ferriss is someone who, had worked with and we'd supported in some podcasts. But then Michael Gerber was like cold email out of the blue, right? And he's the cover quote. And, E-Myth is a book that I actually, probably the one I recommend the most to aspiring entrepreneurs. So, it's a mix, right? And it helps that, FreshBooks was having some success and people were mostly aware of me when I sent the note.
Totally fantastic story. And I think everyone needs to hear this. And I think, Mike, what you just said is relationships. We build one relationship at a time, one connection at a time, one conversation at a time. No one comes fully formed onto the scene going, "Oh, 0 to rock star in 1 step," right? It literally is. And, you can look at this, 2003, 17-year overnight success. I always say I'm a 18-year overnight success because I started my business back in 2002. Now, let's talk about this gradual stair step thing, because every blog starts with 0 readers. Every podcast starts with 0 listeners. Every piece of software starts with 0 users. And you're kind of going, how do I get my first 10 users? And then you get the 10, 15. How do I get to my first 100? How do I get to my first 1,000? Of course, these are harder and harder the numbers we go up. How do I get my first 10,000? And so now 24 million users later, plus, plus, plus. How did you spread the word? How did you get this kind of elevation and escalation going as quickly as you wanted to?
Yeah. So in my experience, it is a constant effort, right? And so the first thing to understand is you're not done. There's no silver bullet. Everything's evolving all of the time. Okay. And so if you think that we've stayed in one place, just saying, "Great, this thing works," and, forget it. That's just not how it goes. So the true story is we started out and I had this internet marketing background and we literally started out just focusing on, search engine optimization. And then we bought some banner ads, right? And then blogging and social media came along and that got sort of interesting and curious. And so that kind of started to bleed us into more like PR-y kind of work. So because you start to think about, oh, I'm going to write, communication. I'm going to talk about how we are building our business. And then, someone comes along who has a really big blog and points a link at you. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden we got this earned media. And so, we were always direct to consumer in our efforts, which was different than our competition and these kinds of things. But we were constantly just thinking about how do we do this. And then we were also, I'll just go ahead and say, if you think about FreshBooks, like we were very creative in our approach. Like we wouldn't just go to a conference. We'd think about when the conference is over, how do we have everybody talking about us? Right. And so what things do we need to do? And we did a variety of things over the years to make sure we met.
Give us 1 or 2 of those conference hacking strategies. I'd love to hear those.
I mean, they ranged from, level of strategicness to custom made shoes and business cards. We were early into business cards with illustrations of the individuals, and we would make a point of literally trying to meet 100% of people at a 400 person conference that was 3 days long. So, and just say hi and shooting the breeze, not trying to sell them anything, but just really building that network. And I met them and blah blah blah. We've got tons of examples. And so, there was a bacon meme one year out in the world. This isn't necessarily the best example. And I only got to see photos of this one. But, so outside South by Southwest, which is a big conference where a lot of our customers were, we created a bacon cart, as a street vendor thing. And so people are like, oh, this is the meme for this year, and taking photos and putting it up. Actually, maybe a better example of that one, again, South by Southwest, we stunted a whole bunch of ways and a whole different bunch of times. When people landed, so over 10,000 people coming, flying in from all over the place, very targeted audiences for our customers. And we would rent buses. And so that when people got off at the airport, we had shuttle buses offering, because FreshBooks, if you don't know, is very, very big on customer service. We just ran a free, basically, shuttle service in nice sort of buses, picking people up from the airport and bringing them into the town center. And they'd hop on the bus and we say, "Hey, listen, this is totally free. FreshBooks picking up the bill. Here's what we do. Hope you enjoy the show. Nice to meet you. Say hello to everybody." And then the conference where they're talking to everybody, and then maybe they see the bacon card, and it's like you leave the show and people are like, "Man, those people were everywhere doing things." But we were very deliberate and very strategic around, okay, how do we show service? How do we get in front of people? How do we have the relationships at the start of the show so we can see the people in the hallways, so we can, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, just some examples of, those are really great, fun examples of, how you can go ahead and think about this. But we were very much like, how do people become aware of us? We got to think about this because, I think of awareness as oxygen for startups. If you have a new product and it's great and nobody knows about you, it doesn't matter, unfortunately.
Yeah. Wow. That is so cool. It's funny. Jeffrey Gitomer, who's the self-titled king of sales, one of the quotes of his that's one of my favorites is, "You don't need more prospects. You need more friends." And it sounds like between the bus and the bacon cart and the saying hello to everybody and non-pitching, non-selling, not, buy our software, give us a try, blah, 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 but literally befriending hundreds of people at every conference, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people over the course of the years, even things like taking them to dinner, right? The 3D dinners with customers, that's intentionally befriending your prospect base, your client base, your customer base in a non-selling, human-to-human relationship building way.
I would agree. And I'm glad you connected the dots with the dinners because the people are always stunned. It's like, oh, I was expecting like a PowerPoint presentation. It's like, no, we're going to give a little toast and welcome you. But, the most important thing is to say hello and for you all to meet each other, right? It's not a sales pitch. So yes, I hadn't ever heard that one before, but I guess we do subscribe.
Right, exactly. Well, tell me a little bit. We're hopping around on the timeline here, but apparently you lived in your parents' basement for 3.5 years, totally revamped and scaled what you were doing with the design firm back in the day to the point where you worked 19 days and earned over $200,000. So tell us about how all that came to be and what were some of the tricks that caused those things to happen.
Great question, because if I hadn't been able to do that, FreshBooks wouldn't exist today. And so before I saved over that invoice and we started FreshBooks, I had my design firm and I had some clients. And for a good chunk of time, I was doing both of those things. And it would be 80% the design firm, for the first, let's say like 12 months. But I really liked the FreshBooks part. And so I just really started shifting my focus elsewhere. And I had these clients who loved me and they'd refer us to other people. And I had a small team that we'd built up, like really 2 other people other than myself and maybe one other here and there. And where I got to was a place where, one year I spent 19 days on the agency business and, really sort of strategic places. Like I'm going to review proposals. Our team's going to work on those. I'm going to be there for key client meetings, but, the work is really being sort of done by others. And we're pricing our projects so that we don't need to be, it's a really interesting thing what you can learn when our clients loved us. We did a great job solving their problems. They always referred us and we liked them too. But I really wanted to be doing this other thing. And so the power of wanting to get away from this thing that we were doing well at just really pushed me further down the value pricing side of the house. Because I was like, if you leave, I'm okay. I almost want you to, but I want to serve you well. I want to make sure you land in a good home and all these things. And so it's, I don't know if that's like, Zen like that, which I guess those things that pull away from you or drawn to you or whatever it is. But yeah, that's where we got it to. But I couldn't have done it without value pricing because I certainly wasn't putting in the hours. But, we had a practice and a discipline that we could offer people that they were happy to, sort of pay us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the rest of the team was working more and more on FreshBooks as well. So it was pretty remarkable.
What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Now, I think another lesson that's embedded in what you said about this sort of, I don't need the business. I mean, I love you. I want to take care of you. We're going to do a world-class job for you. But if you leave, it's okay. Combine that with value-based pricing. I'm guessing that you were positioning your design firm, and again, lesson for everyone listening, you were positioning that as a premium service and you only really wanted to work with premium clients. So you were not working with like broke ass losers or, hey, can you do my website for $400 and stuff like this? You were like the Lexus of the business, right? Back in the day, so that you could charge premium fees and you were really after the top of the market. What are some of the lessons there in premium pricing and specifically client selection? Like, what were you doing to attract the top of the market and not the tire kickers and the goofballs?
So a couple of things. First of all, we had longstanding clients and they were not that big. They were small businesses in many cases themselves, or medium-sized businesses or divisions of bigger businesses. And I was not out actively seeking like, hey, Fortune 5, so actually I want to temper that. And it speaks to, there's a lot of opportunity out there. And, how do you frame things? And so as to how we were positioning, to be honest, I didn't spend a lot of time on that. I spent much more time trying to understand my customers' problems, right? If I can understand your problem, and it's sufficiently large for us to get involved and appropriate to our expertise and domain, then I can probably really help you. And it so happened, and I think there's a nugget in here of, we weren't doing something everyone else was doing. We had relatively rarer expertise. And you combine all that, and it was a great formula.
And you conveyed, I think the interesting thing is that you conveyed that more specialized expertise.
I don't think we told them that. I think they experienced it because the questions we would ask were very different than the questions other people would ask to understand their problems.
I love that. So it's more about problem selection as opposed to client selection, because you select the problem that you solve. Naturally, only the clients that have that problem would end up in a conversation with you.
Yeah, you're staying in where you want to. So by the end of it, I was like, I only want to deal with these things. Like, we used to build websites for people. By the time we were done, like, we were just telling their teams what to do. It was a very different approach.
Yeah, for sure. Let's switch fast forward up to the moment. FreshBooks today, 2020, 2021, 2022, going into the future. Plans for growth, global empire expansion. Are we hiring? Are we branching off into other sorts of software in the financial world? What's cooking? Give us the game plan for the next year or two.
Well, one of the first things you'll learn about FreshBooks is no forward-looking statements is part of our MO. I don't want to tell you what we're going to do. I want to tell you what we just released today, right? That's
Nice.
far more interesting. Maybe that's back to the old, client expectation management or something like that. But having said that, there's a ton of exciting stuff going on at FreshBooks. We're over, sort of 400 people. We're hiring, actively right now. We've gone in the past year from one office in Toronto to offices in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Amsterdam, and actually Croatia. And so we're expanding globally there. We sort of officially launched in more markets, the UK and Ireland, and really being more deliberate about serving more markets. We have had paying customers in 100 countries for years now, over 100 countries, I should say. So we're a global business, but we're getting more deliberate about the markets we purport to go ahead and serve and the degree to which we focus on them. And yeah, we see a long runway. Like, we serve a select segments of the market. So we don't do retail, we don't do restaurants, but we solve a bunch of problems for everyone else. And everyone else has, a series of challenges that they need help with. And we just have a long runway of helping people. Yes, we help you with your billing and managing your books, but we know there are a lot of other things that you work on. And, we see a long runway of helping you with our platform and our software and our service and everything else, tackle more of those problems.
Talk to me a little bit about hiring, because I know a lot of small and solo business owners struggle with how to hire a team. What do I look for? How do I separate people who interview well from people who will really do the job well? Culture fit, all of these things sound like they're important to you. What's your hiring philosophy?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is it is very hard. Like, know that you will make mistakes and that is okay, because, ultimately if you haven't done a lot of hiring in your life, you don't get a lot of opportunities. You can read in a book about it and whatever, but, it's really a thing that comes with repetition and experience. And so your pattern recognition skills, sort of improve over time. So that's the first thing. So take it easy on yourself. And then it's like, okay, good. I'm going to take it easy on myself. What's important? We really believe in culture, and we have from the earliest days. And I think, there are people who want to hire somebody for their technical expertise because they can do something. And I would bias towards someone who's going to be a values fit with you and your organization. You may have differing political views or something like that, and that's great. But if your fundamental values are consistent, and I would encourage you to think about, what are those in our business? How do we think about prioritization of, I don't know, how we treat our employees versus our customers or what have you, and just what is our DNA as a company, and how do we like to communicate, and just maybe try and write that down. And then as you interview, think about, is somebody going to be successful in our environment? Are you expected to do a lot of stuff? Like, to the interviewing well, like maybe somebody worked at a big company and you're a small company. And so they've got a lot of really great answers. But if you dig under what they did every day, is like they did email and other people did stuff, and they leaned on the resources of other stuff. And they were not that industrious. They kind of, middle managed their way to things versus got stuff done. And so, those things you start to get better at picking up on, and it's not easy. And it can be very seductive to hire that person who's in the big company, knows how to talk about stuff, and, ultimately may not get done what you need done. So, really it's time and repetition. I'd encourage you to maybe mock interview some people. If you have some people on staff that are really good, try and reverse engineer why they're good. Think about that. Those are some preliminary thoughts, but it's definitely not a science. And anyone who tells you is kidding themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It can be messy, but you get better at it with the more experience you have. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on. I want to ask you two final questions here as we wrap up. The final question is, how do people get connected and stay connected to more of your brilliance and what FreshBooks is up to? And we're going to link up the ebook and the website. And obviously people can try out FreshBooks, and they should try out FreshBooks. Lord knows it's cost me enough money, like I said at the top. But that's our second question.
Don't say it like that.
I love paying those invoices. I love paying those FreshBooks invoices. I just don't know with the money. I just don't know where the money goes.
To your partners. So yes.
You mean they actually get the money on the other end?
Oh yes.
Oh, now you tell me. Now you tell me. All right. Well, zooming out 50,000 feet, my second to last question is, overall, if we were to leave folks with one concept about their entrepreneurial journey based on all of the fabulous things that you just shared, what would you like that final concept to stick in their mind?
The path to your next place, because you're constantly growing, whether you know it or not, and be deliberative about that. Your path to your next place is going to be a mindset shift, right? It really, like, growth, and we believe this at FreshBooks, is like, business growth when you're a business owner is personal growth. And don't confuse the thing and look at the business and say that you probably need to start looking inside yourself. And I don't say that to be difficult or challenging or hurtful in any way. That's where the opportunity lies. And so I'm trying to steer you towards that. So look inside yourself and say, hey, how am I thinking about this thing? Do I need to get over some hurdle? I feel stuck or whatever, and find somebody to, say that to and see what they have to say, right? So whether it's a peer or a spouse or whatever. But yes, the path to business growth, if that's what you're seeking, is sort of personal growth. And that is just a series of mindset shifts. So I think that would be the thing I would encourage you to look at. And then to answer your other question, hopefully I'm relatively easy to find. You can get me at Mike McDerment on Twitter, which is around the @FreshBooks way of doing things. You can find out more about FreshBooks at freshbooks.com and find your way back to me on Twitter and things like that there. And, I'd love to hear from you. And, I'm grateful for your time here today if you're still listening. So thank you very much for having me, David.
Mike McDerment, you are a rock star. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on with us. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.